Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of Community Chat for the 2020 school year. We really appreciate everyone being here. Today's Community Chat, first things first. I'm Anthony Medina. I'm the Assistant Director for the Center for Community Engagement here at Gonzaga. Really happy to have you all. If you're a fan of the show from last year, you'll notice that our lovely co-host from last year, Catherine Collins, isn't with us today. She graduated in the spring, and so we're joined this year by a rotating cast of our student leaders. And for today's chat, it's sponsored by RISE, Rooted in Solidarity and Engagement. So it's our first year program, and Justin and Jill are going to be joining us today as our co-hosts. I'll turn it over to them in a second, but I did want to share. I'm looking at the Zoom count right now. We have, hundreds and hundreds and dozens of students joining us today from all over the world, all walks of life. I think my grandma from New Jersey is listening today. I appreciate it. Thanks, Gaga. And yeah, so we have this huge fan base. Be part of the community chat this year. If you haven't been part of it before and you'd like to be, this year we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to have a lot more student questions involved during the chat. And so if you haven't been here before, we welcome you. Thank you for being here. So we have about an hour today. We'd like to get finished up around 2:55 if that's possible, so that we have a little bit of time at the end for our students to transition. But without further ado, welcome to our community chat, our first community chat. It's just a great opportunity for us to hear from awesome community partners about the good work that they're doing in our community around critical social justice issues that matter to our students. So for our first years who are new to Spokane, perhaps, maybe you're from Spokane, this is a great opportunity to get to know a little bit more about our community. Today's episode is going to be focused on immigrant and refugee experiences here in Spokane. I don't want to speak for our panelists, but I do want to speak for us. What we're hearing today is a part of the story, right? No one here is speaking on behalf of any community, but we are speaking here on behalf of organizations and ourselves around how we understand issues here in Spokane. And so please keep that in mind as we go through the chat. There's so much more to know about these communities. There's so much more to know about these issues that we'll be able to get to in an hour. So this is a start, a step along the way, not the whole shebang. Without further ado, Justin and Jill, I'm going to pass it over to you. So thanks everyone for joining us. Justin and Jill.
Hi everyone, I'm Jill. I'm one of the RISE core leaders, as Anthony said. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about our program, RISE, which Anthony said stands for Rooted in Solidarity and Engagement. So it's a first year experience program that engages students with the Spokane community through social justice and solidarity and community engagement. And today we're so excited for our first year students and our leaders to learn about immigrant and refugee experiences from you all and hear a bit of the story in Spokane.
Cool. And I'm Justin. I'm another core RISE leader. And I just wanted to give some context for our discussion today. So I wanted to define the difference between immigrant and an asylum seeker. An immigrant is a person who migrates to another country, usually for permanent residence, whereas an asylum seeker is someone who oftentimes is fleeing a difficult situation and they don't actually apply for asylum until after they are in the country to which they're seeking asylum protections. Yeah, so also now I just wanted to if the panelists could introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do.
Hi, my name is Sarah Smith, and I'm here for World Relief. I am the volunteer coordinator in our Spokane office. So I get to work with a lot of students in my time, plugging them in as volunteers. So maybe if you become a volunteer someday, we'll get to chat a bit more. But the question we've been asked is, what is the strangest, most fun home activity I've done during this time of social distancing? And for me, that is definitely getting a puppy. We have an adorable little 10-month puppy named Princess now that we got in April. So she's been taking up a whole lot of our quarantine time.
What's the pup's name, Sarah?
Princess.
Princess.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name, it's my turn. Is that okay? So my name is Maisa Abudia. I know usually when you have a immigrant or refugee, they will have a difficult last name. So Maisa Abudia, I'm the Feast World Kitchen director and the head chef for the kitchen. It's a non-profit organization who help immigrant and refugee serving food to our community and making a little bit income. I'm also interpreter for Spokane Public School and a sub-teacher for Spokane Public School. I work a lot for the ELD students.
Thank you, Mesa.
Cool. Hi, my name is Brent Hendricks. I'm the founder and director of Global Neighborhood, and we're a nonprofit here in Spokane, actually just across the street from Gonzaga. And we offer pathways to employment for our neighbors who came as refugees. So providing job training and jobs and paychecks to refugees here in Spokane, primarily through our thrift store, and then we do some recycling business on the side of that as well. So yeah, our goal is to write paychecks and give opportunities to people who came here as refugees. We've been doing that for 13 years now, I guess. And one interesting, or the weirdest thing I guess I've done through quarantine, I ended up planting and growing and harvesting a whole field of wheat at my house. So just because, what else are you gonna do, you know?
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. Jill, I'm going to pass it off to you in just a second, but I'm just so excited to have these panelists here today. The work that I get to hear about around the refugee and immigrant community here in Spokane, it always excites me. And to see the folks that are representing here in this room today, it's exciting to get a chance to hear from you all about the work that you do. So one of the things that we do in the CCE is we really highlight reflection. And so today, you know, some of our questions are kind of rooted in this what, so what, now what model, right? And so we're going to learn a little bit about what you all do. And then the so what is like really why it matters. Why does it matter? Why should it matter? And the now what is what could we do now? What next for our students? And so for our first year students, you know, as we're asking these questions, try to be tracking that as we go along, right? What's going on? Why does it matter? And what next? What can we do about it? So Jill, I'll pass it off to you. Thanks everyone for being here again. Great.
Yeah, just to echo Anthony, thank you all. It's so exciting to hear more and more about your organizations and the work you're all doing. Our first question we wanted to ask is, why is it so important that your organization is working within the Spokane community? Why does your work matter here specifically?
I can go first. I think that for us, we found over the years just how important it is for people who are trying to establish a new life here, how important it is for them to be able to have a job and earn some money and provide for themselves and their families. It's basic, but it's really a super foundational piece. We had been doing early on 13 years ago when we first started. We've been doing a bunch of other type of support services for refugees, and that was really good, but we found that stuff didn't really stick, so to speak. It didn't really have that much of a lasting impact if people didn't have a job. And it just comes back to, like, we talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So there's this foundational piece of stability and security, and if people don't have stability and security, it's really hard to achieve or accomplish any of these other things that they're trying to do. And so we've really focused everything on employment, because with refugees, there's are really the biggest thing that they need is an opportunity. They have the work ethic, they have the smarts, they have the tenacity, the experience. They have all of these amazing things. Really, the missing piece is an opportunity. And just because of their situation, maybe because of, they don't have local references, a local network, or maybe they have, a hard time speaking English early on. Those opportunities are often not given to them. So yeah, we just decided to start a business to give those opportunities ourselves. And that's proven over the years to be a really important piece. So we're just always working to expand our business in whatever ways we can so that we can hire more people and give people more job training and help them either continue working with us or find jobs elsewhere in the community.
Thank you, Brent. And real quick, maybe it'd be helpful to, could you speak a little bit to the different communities that you work with within the refugee communities, right? And so,
yeah, sure.
What populations are you typically working with? What folks are coming through?
Yeah, we've had people work with us now from 30 different countries over the last, our store has been open for 9 years now, and we've had people working with us from 30 different countries. So it's really, all over the place. More recently, just, in the last 3.5 years since the Trump administration and all the, well, I don't know what kind of language we're allowed to use here. So anyway, things got bad and there are not very many people coming as refugees anymore. That's been pretty tough. So we've also been working a lot in the last year or two with people who are coming from the Marshall Islands. There's a fairly sizable community of Marshallese people in Spokane who aren't technically refugees, but they're facing a lot of the same barriers that refugees are with language and culture and poverty and all of those things. So we're working with them more recently and asylum seekers and but we've had people from all over the world.
Thank you, Brent. Mesa?
So as all of you know that many refugee and immigrant we opened feast at the end of March. So the first takeout used to be in April 14. So our mission before opening was to give a training, and there is many people who, there is a plenty chef in Spokane, and most of them, they went for different organizations to start opening business, but I'm one and I am one of them. It was really hard to understand the concept, regulation, many things. So Feast was a non-profit organization that will help learning, give a training, making a takeout, catering, just to prove for those refugees that your business gonna work or no. To make sure that they understand the whole process before involving ourselves or everyone to have loans, killing the families by having those loans. With the circumstances happened with COVID-19, many of them, so we used to have those meetings that having our construction in the building, it's an old building, and we're doing the construction license for the kitchen. Many of them start losing their jobs, their main jobs, which is, many of them, they have, they working in the industrial services. So they start asking how we can do something that help and support our family. So it was a little bit risky, in this time of the year to open for a takeout and to make sure that everyone's safe. The food is also safe for everyone. And it was amazing. So we start, this is on April 4th. And we're keeping doing this.
And so you kind of already went over to the second question, which we'll get to in a little bit, but when I heard about Feast World Kitchen opening, I was so excited. I think Spokane gets a bad rap sometimes for not having as many ethnic foods as other big cities, other medium-sized cities, right? And so what y'all are doing and being able to bring to our community, I think, is so incredible. Can you speak a little bit to the different kinds of cuisine that have happened in Feast World Kitchen so far?
So we're trying to do a rotation. We do have this sheet that will accept anyone who, even those who doesn't have experience, they want to do something in the kitchen, they want to have some experience, will accept anyone to be a part of Feast. But what we're trying to do to make a variety every week. So we're opening Thursday till Sunday. So every day you're gonna have, for example, Thursday there is Mediterranean from Egypt. Sunday there is an African. Saturday you'll have Mexican food. So if we'll make this variety, and to be honest, it's amazing. You know, people love it, and this variety gives something new to Spokane.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sarah?
Great. So I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with World Relief, but we're a national and international organization. In the United States, we have about 16 offices. And the primary thing that we are known for is refugee resettlement. So we're one of 9 agencies that is able to resettle refugees in the United States. And we're the only organization that does that here in Spokane. So that's one important reason for us to be here. And so a few years ago, we celebrated our 10,000th refugee coming to Spokane through our office, which was really exciting. So when they arrive, a case manager picks them up from the airport, finds them housing, helps them enroll in school, look for a job, helps them just start their life here in Spokane. But we do a lot more after that initial resettlement period, which is 3 months. So our office is the largest provider of low-cost legal services in Eastern Washington. So we've helped hundreds of people every year to get their green cards, to get citizenship, to do family reunifications. We do some applications for asylum and a few other things as well. So that's a really great resource for our immigrant community here. Alongside that, we also have some extended case management for the refugee and immigrant population here in Spokane. So we have some employment case managers that help people find jobs. It could be their first job. It could also be a new, better job, or maybe they lost their job, so looking for a new job that way. We also have extended case managers who help with barriers like access to childcare, maybe some financial problems or housing issues, things like that. And also a case manager who works with people to help them get access to medical care, because our medical system is hard to navigate for people who speak English. So for those that don't, having someone to help them walk through that is really important. A lot of the work that we do is just helping people access other resources that already exist in the community, but they might not know about. And being advocates for them as they try and navigate that, again, especially if there's a language barrier, having somebody else to walk alongside you as you go through that is really important. And then we have our community engagement team, which is the team that I'm part of. So we do a lot of education and advocacy in helping make Spokane a more welcoming community for our immigrant and refugee neighbors. So hopefully at some point, some of you will get to participate in the refugee simulation that our office usually does. Right now they're kind of on hold with COVID, but it's a great experience to learn about the process overseas that refugees go through in order to get here. We also send a lot of speakers out into the community like this. And we work with over 300 volunteers, over 40 churches, and lots of other community organizations.
Looks like you froze there, Sarah.
To help make sure that Spokane is a well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. I think we lost you there for a second, but really wonderful stuff.
Yes, I think I froze there.
That's okay. That happens. I think Justin's up next with our next question. But for our audience, please put questions in the chat. We want to hear from you in real time. So if you have things that are coming up, things that you're wondering, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to those questions as we move on. But for now, Justin, if you want to take us away with the next question.
Yeah, I actually have an additional question. I was just wondering, because I know Brent had briefly mentioned that the Marshallese population isn't considered refugees, and I was wondering if he could maybe explain why. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I'll give my best. I don't know the full situation. Sarah might actually know more than me, but in my understanding, there's a special immigrant visa created for the Marshallese community, is my understanding, because they're a U.S. territory, I believe, in the South Pacific, and the U.S. used the Marshall Islands to test our nuclear bombs, like back in the 50s or 60s, and so we basically nuked their islands, and pretty much destroyed stuff. And so now there's a special immigrant visa that's created that is allowing people from the Marshall Islands to immigrate to the United States and become full U.S. citizens because we nuked their country. So now they're coming here, and I don't know the history of the community in Spokane, but for whatever reason, there's a fairly sizable community of people from the Marshall Islands that is establishing itself here in Spokane. I'm not sure how many. There might be over 1,000. I'm not sure. Sarah might know more too with that. But there's quite a few people from the Marshall Islands who are ending up here in Spokane. So yeah, they're not fleeing persecution. They're basically can't live in their own country because we bombed it to test our bombs. So pretty lame, but they're coming here, which is good. So we're trying to help people out.
Real quick, one of the people who was going to join us today for our panel, or a representative from this kind of newer nonprofit, was Ryan Dowse, and they've started this Marshallese Community Advisory Board over the last year. So there's now officially a nonprofit working with the Marshallese community more specifically. And Ryan couldn't join us today, and we didn't have representation from their organization today. But I think, yeah, a really interesting niche within the immigrant refugee population here in Spokane is our Marshallese community. And the question around, our next question that Justin will ask around COVID is particularly telling for them, because it did disproportionately, COVID had disproportionately affected our Marshallese community, right? They don't represent much of our population percentage-wise, but at one point they were around 25% of the cases. So very, very interesting. But Justin, take us away with the next question. Unless Sarah, if you wanted to add anything, or Maisa, if you wanted to add anything, you can.
Cool. I think it's also really important to acknowledge that with the current context that we're in, that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted communities, especially the ones that you all serve or are a part of. So I was just wondering, how has the current crisis changed the way you think about your work, and also just the way that you operate in the community?
So I think I answered this question before. So as I mentioned, Our mission was to do takeout and catering, but the most important thing to give the training and chance for those people who are gonna start their own business and match everyone together. We used to have some training from SNAP, from Avista, from very nice places. They offer to do this, but with the COVID-19, everything canceled. When we start opening for takeout, it was really good and helpful. This is a chance give many people who just have no work anymore, just to make a little bit extra income, at least to pay their rent, to pay their bills. This was really helpful for them.
Yeah, for us, the impact, I mean, it's shown, I guess, we often say, like, for the people that we're working with, probably, you know, 2/3 of the barriers that they're facing are really just barriers of poverty that are shared by, you know, anybody who doesn't have any savings and is working a minimum wage job. You know, that's transportation, healthcare, childcare, housing, all of these things. So that's like 2/3 of the issues, but then those issues of poverty are compounded by a lack of, you know, a social network here, lack of language and culture acquisition, you know. It just makes it harder to navigate things. And the shutdown and this whole COVID thing has really shown us again how close to the edge a lot of people are living, where, you know, we had to shut down our store for 10, 11 weeks. So we did what we could to keep as many people working as possible, but we weren't making any income. So, and it hits people pretty hard when their one source of income gets dropped out. So, yeah, I guess it's just reinforced to me the importance of getting people employment and getting people good jobs too. Because, I mean, we're trying to be a workplace that's not just writing paychecks. I mean, that's pretty important, but to be a workplace that is, you know, acknowledging the humanity of people and working with them in situations, being flexible with things like childcare and housing and transportation and things like that. So yeah, it's tough it's tough being in America when you don't have networks and money anyway. And this has just highlighted that and made it worse. So
Thank you, Brent. And Sarah, I know you dipped out there for a second. So this question was particularly around how the current COVID crisis has affected or changed the way that you think about your work. How is it affecting the communities you're working with?
Yeah. So I think one word that came to mind when I read this question was just access. I think right now for anyone, it's hard to access a lot of things. But for a lot of our refugee and immigrant communities where there is a language barrier, it just becomes that much harder. So just access to information and the correct information, access to technology has been a huge thing. Access to just different resources as well. Those have all been things that we've been thinking about a lot and have been trying to address in our work over the last little bit, especially as our office has been closed for pretty much the whole time and have only been doing in person for essential services. And so we had at the beginning of this a team that was just doing outreach calls to check in and find out what people needed and how they were doing. We had a lot of people helping with unemployment claims because I don't know if any of you had any experience with that, but a lot of waiting, a lot of having to send extra things in. So just navigating all of that has been a challenge for a lot of people that we've been trying to help address. And then more recently, and we've been really lucky to be able to send out community members to do education within their own communities and to address needs that way, find out what people still need, what questions there are, but continue to do education around COVID as well as they're doing that, which is really exciting and has been a good thing for those communities as well.
All right, thank you so much. Kind of following up that question, we were curious, how can students get involved with your organizations during the current crisis and be involved with your work, and then also during more normal circumstances, how are students able to be involved with you?
For us right now, come shop at our store. That's and donate stuff to our store. I mean, that's the easiest thing. And I mean, the only reason our store exists is to write paychecks to refugees. So that's where the money goes. So come across the street and go thrift store shopping. If we have a couple state work study positions open right now that are posted on the new Zags, whatever the website is, Zag Fire or something. What is it called?
Zags Ignite.
Ignite. That's the one. So if you're a state work study student, send that in because I'm interviewing people right now. But otherwise, yeah, our volunteer positions are kind of like cut back right now just because of, you know, social distancing stuff, and it's just is a huge hassle. So yeah, in normal times, we have some volunteer opportunities, but really the biggest thing is just bringing a bag of donations down, drop it off, and then come shop and buy stuff. So
there should be a Zags Fire website. I don't know who can get on that. That soon.
So for Feast World Kitchen, you can, any student can log into the website, or so Feast World Kitchen, it's www.feastworldkitchen.org. There is two opportunity, either if they wanted to do a volunteer, or maybe there is some immigrant and some student wanted to do a takeout or catering. They can, for both sides, they can log into the website or the Facebook page, and they can fill, there is a sheet over there, they can fill their name, there is application also if they're gonna do a takeout. It's a couple of questions, and after that we're always encouraging people to help with the takeout, especially students. We have some students from Whitworth, they start already helping us. You know, our program, it's taking out from 4 till 6:30 for the dinner. So having 80 or 100 order during those 2 hours, it's a little bit hard. And you know, because we want to work as much as we can to make each chef save those money. Volunteer always helpful. Otherwise, if they wanted to do a takeout, they have to fill this application, and we'll make an interview and explain everything.
And of course, my students can eat there too, right? They can eat at Feast World Kitchen, order from them.
They're gonna talk. There is a student who's learning Spanish, and he was helping with a Mexican she's speaking Spanish. So this is a kind of a practice for anyone for the language. It's they will have, for sure, they will have a dinner this night.
Awesome.
Great. at World Relief right now, our volunteer opportunities are pretty limited, partially because we've had lower arrivals, but also because we've had to move all of them virtual. So we do have some opportunities to volunteer with us as like a virtual conversation partner, or we have some volunteers doing citizenship studying with people as well. And then probably the biggest thing right now, though, that all of you can and hopefully will do is advocate for policies that will be beneficial for the refugee resettlement program and also just immigration in general to the United States. A big one coming up is the presidential determination. So every year, the president gets to decide how many refugees will be allowed to be resettled in the United States. Last year, the number was lowered to 18,000, and it had been lowered the previous few years as well. And so this year, it's really important to do some advocacy around the presidential determination and hoping that we get more refugees this year. So if you want to follow us on social media or sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with things that you can help advocate with our Congress people.
Awesome. So it's also at a time like this, it's also really important that we like highlight some of the positives going on in the community. So I was wondering, where have you all found hope within your community doing the work that you do?
I can go first this time. So one thing that's been really exciting for us has been that we have had a few refugee families arrive in the last few weeks. After March, there had been a long period where no families were arriving, and just at the end of July, we got our first van that came, and we've had 2 families arrive since, and we have a few more arrivals scheduled for September as well. So that's just been a really exciting thing to happen.
I'll go second. So the most important thing for me, there is many things was really enjoyable and helpful. As I told you, there is the kind of diversity in this building. It's really nice. Having learning, it's like traveling all over the world in one spot in a dining table. So more than that, I was really happy when I be a part to support one family to pay their rent and their bills during this time of the year.
Yeah, I think similarly for me, I've been inspired and encouraged just by the just being around my employees and their families and seeing their tenacity and their grit getting through tough stuff. That's been inspiring. And then also just on a larger scale, it's like just seeing all of the protests and things that are happening around the country has actually given me some hope, because it's been a long 4 years and I'm exhausted. And so it's nice to see a lot of people not putting up with crap anymore, which is great. So that's simultaneously the situation that warrants the protests are super depressing, but the fact that people are getting out and speaking up is giving me hope too. So.
Man, well, thank you all. Formally, that's all the questions that we have for you, but I'd like for our classrooms there, we have about 8 minutes. I'd love to hear a question from one of our small groups. Not all at once. Oh, here we go. We got one. Okay, from team 326. So where are y'all? I see y'all. Raise your hands. Great. If you want to unmute the student leader there and ask the question yourself, that'd be great. We'd love to hear your voice. Unless you want me to do it, in which case just let me know.
Or can you hear us?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Let me just get in the chat. Okay, so our question was, how does refugee resettlement work? For example, is it a family that allows someone to settle in Spokane, or is it often by random placement?
I can take that one. So the refugee resettlement process is through the UN and multiple US agencies as well, specifically the State Department. But so it's not usually a random assignment. It's way more likely for someone to come to a certain city if they do have what we call a US tie. So that's a family member or a friend that they know in a city, they can put that on their application. We want to set people up for success. So if they have somebody already here, then they're more likely to go to that place. It's also based on people groups that are already here. They'd rather send someone to a place where there are other people that speak their language rather than just somewhere where they're the only person that speaks their language. So it's not just a totally random thing. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's a little glimpse into it.
Thank you, Sarah. I think we have time for one more question. If there's another team that would like to ask a question, I'll give it 15 seconds of wonderful, awkward silence. Another from team 326, I think. Is that right? Awesome, take it away.
I was just wondering how the healthcare system works for refugees and immigrants coming to the country.
Are you specifically talking about like insurance?
Yeah, or just like how they get access to healthcare.
Yeah. So they're required to go through 3 medical screenings when they arrive. And here, Unify Community Health does a lot of work with our refugee populations coming in. And so they get on Washington Apple Healthcare when they arrive so that they can get the access to medical care that they need. But through those initial screenings, they get a primary care doctor and then can, the clinics also have interpreters so that they can access the care that they need.
Thank you, Sarah. Maisa or Brent, do you have anything you want to add to that? No pressure. Okay. Awesome. Well, I think we're just about at time. So I want to thank our panelists. If all of the rooms could unmute yourselves, one of the hardest things to do in this new Zoom world is present to like silent people. And I think that your energy matters. So if you can unmute yourselves and give our panelists a round of applause and thank them for their time here. We'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, it's wonderfully awkward. Come on, bring it in, bring it in. We really appreciate y'all. Justin and Jill, do you want to add anything or kind of wrap us up here? Anything you want to add?
I'd just love to say thank you to all the panelists for your thoughts. I'm really excited to learn more about opportunities to get involved and continue learning about your organizations. And I hope our first year students feel the same way.
Same thing. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists and you all amazing work in the community. So keep it up.
Thanks, Justin and Jill. From our panelists, anything you'd like to say before we head out? Anything you want to say to our students?
No, thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I would encourage you guys to go and eat at Feast because we've had some really amazing food there. And Brent has some really good deals over at Global Neighborhood. So I definitely encourage you guys to go.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll make sure you will have a free meal too.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. For all the students who joined us today, whether you're here in the rooms as first year students or you're watching the recording, you joined us today because you are interested in this topic for some reason. Something about this topic spoke to you. And so we hope that you'll follow that interest. And if you're interested in getting involved, these three organizations are three wonderful ways to start to get involved. And now you know three people, right? You know three people who might be able to get you placed. And so if you're interested in learning more and getting involved, we'd love to help place you. The CCE is here for that. So if you're interested in getting involved, come to us and we can help connect you to the folks out in the community. We're really grateful that you joined us today. And I'm getting word from our IT department that this episode was the largest episode we've had. We broke the servers for Zoom again. I know Gonzaga is just really upset with us for how many times we break the servers with these awesome episodes. And so we really appreciate y'all being with us. Thank you. And I think that's going to be it for our first episode of Community Chat. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks y'all.
Thanks for having us.